Hundreds of thousands of people had turned out for the far-right protests in London. Police estimate the figure is 110,000, although Tommy Robinson laughingly claimed it was 3 million. More than a third of London? More people than those who protested the Iraq war? I mean, these people are such charlatans. Now, before I offer my analysis, I want to show you that, yes, this is indeed a far-right rally. Now, we've had some videos of protesters acting violently. The Met Police said officers are having to intervene in multiple locations to stop United Kingdom protesters trying to access sterile areas, breach police cordons, or get to opposing groups. A number of officers have been assaulted. Now, this is a video of so-called patriots fighting. Now, a protest supposedly about uniting the kingdom and celebrating Britain, shouting, "You can shove Palestine up your ass." And this one, a protester called for Starmer to be assassinated. And I bet you this won't be covered on GB News.
Keir Starmer needs to be assassinated, yeah? Someone needs to shoot. Someone needs to shoot Keir Starmer.
Now, will he be arrested? You know, holding up placards will. But what about calling for Starmer to be shot on camera? Now, I thought this next clip was really funny. A Zionist was told to get lost by Tommy supporters.
Zionists not welcome. England for the English, Britain for the British. Out with
Now, what I love so much about this is that Tommy Robinson is a Zionist too. We also have Elon Musk addressing the rally, right? A protest about the UK, which is being addressed by a foreign billionaire. So look, this is a far-right rally led by Tommy Robinson, who's far-right, including speakers such as Katie Hopkins, who once called for small boats to be gunned down, Lawrence Fox, Advance UK. Now look, I don't think every single person who turned up is far-right, but 110,000 people could be completely radicalized. Now, a lot of these people have nowhere to go, right? Because the centre ground has collapsed. Keir Starmer, who's supposed to be the leader of the progressive movement, has done nothing but capitulate to the right wing. And I think it's really salient to point out that we don't actually have a nationalist or Britain first movement in this country. Now, I'm not a nationalist, but the sheer hypocrisy of these people who say it's about patriotism and looking after our own, but they're being led by a Zionist and being addressed by a billionaire from South Africa. A march that has multiple Israeli flags on display. So why is this happening? Why were there 110,000 people who turned up, which, to be honest, is massive? This is the biggest far-right presence on the streets, I think, maybe in history. But again, why is this happening? It's because people's material conditions have not been met. There's been a lack of leadership from Keir Starmer. There has been a malignment of the left. People have nowhere to go but the right wing because the establishment crushed and continues to crush the left-wing alternative. I mean, what does the so-called centre ground offer people? A continuation of the same economic policies that led to what we're seeing today. The continuation of austerity, cuts to public services, increased waiting times to see a GP, buses being terrible, trains being a rip-off and slow or being cancelled. Like, nothing works in this country, and everyone agrees, left, right, or even in the centre, that this country is fucked. This place is no longer a viable place to live. Everyone's miserable. I know the weather doesn't help, obviously, but we can't do anything about that. But when it comes to just doing our basic things, when it's going to work and then paying for your rent or mortgage, it feels like that we're being ripped off because we are, right? Rents are high, mortgages have increased, bills are ridiculously high, and people don't seem to have enough money to have fun anymore. There's also a deeper problem, which I think obviously started with Margaret Thatcher. She destroyed community. She destroyed the public realm. She decided that, do you know what? We can turn this country into a casino for the wealthy. The billionaire class, the corporations, have looted from this country for decades. The Tories and Thatcher decided to do that, by the way. These are political decisions to say, we're going to allow the richer to get richer by cutting their taxes, by privatizing public services, by destroying unions. And then obviously we were told the wealth would trickle down. That was a fucking lie, because the wealth has trickled up. Now, when you have decades and decades and decades of growing inequality, the poor are getting poorer, the rich are getting richer, do you think no one's going to notice? Do you think people are just going to sit around and say, this is absolutely fine? No, they're not. Now, of course, for the Conservatives and the Labour Party, they're in positions of power, they're MPs, they're well paid. They don't understand what it's like for the working class. And even when they do, all they do is say, we care about the working class, we know things are tough, and do fuck all about it. Even politicians like Angela Rayner, who came from a working class background, worked all the way up to deputy leadership of the Labour Party and then deputy prime minister, completely sold out her roots. She sold out the left, she sold out the working class, just so she could have some kind of clout with Keir Starmer, who, by the way, absolutely ignored her. And guess where she is now? She's had to resign. We have had a political establishment, no matter if it's Labour or the Tories, work for themselves, work for big business, work for corporations. They've worked for insurance-based companies. They work for the oil companies. They work for arms manufacturers. There is a complete lack of trust in society. And do you blame anyone? Our political institutions are failing us. We don't have democracy in this country. It's a barely functioning democracy. We have a media which pushes out right-wing billionaire corporate propaganda because the mainstream media is owned by a handful of people. The media that wants to talk about immigration, refugees, asylum seekers day to day, but they won't talk about tax avoidance, tax evasion. They won't talk about the Jeff Bezos of the world. They won't talk about Elon Musk, really, unless it's actually pampering him and making him look good. Society has been completely divided. And I'm not talking about 2016 when people voted to leave or remain, when liberals say that actually politics began in this era and things were fine before then. No, it wasn't, right? 2012, yes, we had the Olympics and all the celebrations. That wasn't the peak of British society, right? We still had deep problems. We had riots a year before. We had austerity. We had 330,000 people die because of George Osborne's decisions. We had people on benefits being kicked off benefits, disabled people being kicked off benefits, told, you're obviously fit for work, and then days later they die of an illness or a heart attack because of the DWPs and its work capability assessments. We have had an assault on the poor, on the disabled, on the working class of this country. We have had a class war from the very wealthiest in society towards the rest of us. That's what's been happening. And the political establishment have done nothing to address the multiple crises. The crises of inequality, the crises of the climate, the crises of refugees because we decide that actually we want to bomb all these countries. We have an unstable world because the geopolitical atmosphere is completely fucked, right? And we're going to have way more climate refugees, by the way. The political establishment won't do anything about this. And then when there's a left-wing alternative, be it Jeremy Corbyn or someone else, and says, things must be different and things can be different, what do we have? The political establishment, whether it's the Conservatives, Tories, the media, destroyed that man and destroyed any left-wing movements. And do you think that radicalism was just going to disappear? Do you think people were just going to go back to the centre ground and say, oh, we need that good old centrist politics, don't we? The grown-up politics. Well, guess what? The Labour Party under Keir Starmer was supposedly the adults in the room. And look where we are now. Things could not be worse. And now we've got charlatans from the right who say they speak for you, who say they care about you, who say, do you know what? All we need to do is look inwards. We just need to care about Britain. Screw everybody else. We need less migrants. We need to stop the boats because your life will get better. Of course, that's not going to happen. The same people who attack the most marginalised people, right, if you're fleeing from war, are the same people that attack the British working class. Do you remember Chavs? Right? Do you remember the elites laughing at people on benefits? Right? Do you remember Benefit Street on Channel 4? Right? These same right-wing people hate the British working class. They hate the white working class. And now they're pretending they care about the white working class because they found a new target, which is immigrants and refugees and asylum seekers. There's no belonging in this country anymore. Why is that? The public realm has been decimated. Public services have been destroyed. But it's not just that, right? It's not just an economic one. The damage that Margaret Thatcher did to this country is understated. She instilled an individualist ideology, which is to say, we are not society, we are a collection of individuals. You are selfish, care about yourself and your family, and that's it. And that is such a poisonous ideology. That is where we are today. We have a system that incentivizes greed and selfishness. Now, that doesn't mean that is the human condition. Far from it, right? A lot of people think that capitalism is the dominant system because it reflects human nature. Not true, right? There is greed in all of us, but there's compassion in all of us. There's community in all of us. There's hate in all of us. What matters is which political and economic system serves which part of our humanity. Now, we can have an economic system like capitalism, which capitalism is decaying. We're going into a more techno-feudalist society. I think that Yanis Varoufakis' assessment and analysis of the future, I happen to agree with it. These are enticing the greed in all of us, the hate in all of us, to not trust other people, right? That is being fostered, that is being nurtured, and that is what we're seeing in society. We could have another system which talks about collectivism, which talks about compassion and empathy, and a society that's more equal. We could have that and have a better system too, but that is not in place. Right? We are being, and we have been, completely atomized, and that is the neoliberal experiment. We are still living under Thatcher's Britain, and what we're seeing now is the fallout from it. And the far right are filling that hole because people are desperate for change. I'm desperate for change. Everyone is. Now, I think what's going to happen in the next few years, there's going to be a choice, a real choice. There's going to be a choice from the left, right? And the left is going to offer to stand for the many, not the few, right? We want to attack the real minority that's destroying our lives, the billionaires. But there's going to be another path. It's going to be the right wing. It's going to be division between the working class, attacking people of color, immigrants, refugees, and people with different religions. But guess what? They're also going to defend the oligarchy. So we're coming towards a huge inflection point where the country and the world is at stake. We need strong anti-fascist and left-wing leadership, not just to take on the establishment, but to take on the far right. And I'm sorry, but we need to stop being fucking pussies, right? We need to push more radical politics. I think redistribution of wealth and power, whilst keeping the same system that led to these inequalities, isn't good enough. I think social democracy is over. Capitalism is dying whether we like it or not, but what comes after is our choice. A feudal society where tech bros control everything, where we don't have countries or leaders of countries, we have CEOs of countries, right? This is where we're running towards. Or we could have a vision of democracy and freedom, right? Freedom. The fundamental thing I want to talk about here is freedom, right? The people can have democratic control over their destinies and their lives. And yes, that's called socialism. Now, the difference between me and being a politician is that I could be more free. I don't think Zach Palansky or this new left-wing party can say, here's socialism on the ballot. I don't think that would work. What I am saying, though, is someone like me who's on the sidelines, and others who are watching, and if you have a platform, I think it's our duty to push the Overton window left, to make left-wing politics more palatable. So I don't think that the Green Party can offer a manifesto where it says the workers will, own the means of production. We're not even there yet, right? We do not have the conditions for these kinds of changes, and that would get destroyed at the ballot box. But what we can do is start making socialism more popular and explain to people what socialism actually is. Not that, socialism means when the government does stuff and everyone's on the same wage. That's fantasy stuff because that's not true. But actually, the real definition of socialism, which is democracy and freedom, which means that when you turn up to work, you have democratic control over your workplace. Instead of what we have today, which is one CEO at the top who barely contributes anything, tells you what to wear, what to do, how much you get paid, and how long you do it for. And that is a feeling of alienation because you turn up to work every single day with no control of your destiny. Whereas instead, we could have a future where you get a say in a place where you spend most of your waking time at. I think the conventional wisdom is to look at the Overton window, see it going to the right, and the left must become more moderate because we'll be seen as, on the fringe and we want to stay relevant, right? I understand the logic. And obviously, the left needs to improve, I think, its image, its arguments, because a lot of the time, I think we can be very off putting and quite unpopular. I think that's absolutely true. But I also don't think that we should move with the Overton window because that's what Keir Starmer's done. And has that helped? No, all it's done is just breathed fire into right wing politics. It's told people on the right that their views are legitimate, right? For us, again, who are not politicians, who have the freedom to do this, we need to hold the line and push the Overton window back to the left. It's going to be a long process. It's going to be difficult. But to be honest, we have no other choice. Remember that we have live shows 3 times per week, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7:30 p.m. discussing the latest political stories. We are trying to go full-time and grow this channel. You can support us by going to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There you can support us monthly via Patreon, or there is another link to a one-off donation. Alternatively, you can become a YouTube member for just 99p. Remember to like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you soon.